the big problem became where everyone started chasing social media likes and followers. Typically, silhouette pictures, abstract, anything that looks on a phone will do well on social media. You look on street photography forums on Instagram or whatever it is, and I can't tell whose image is what because their style doesn't stand out. Not only did you copy a style, but you've gone and copied an exact replica of some picture that someone has done. We've definitely gone down the path of chasing the followers and the likes, and it's hurt us.
Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of Eyeshot 50mm. And today we're sitting down with Phil Penman. Phil Penman is a British photographer based in New York whose work sits at the intersection of street photography, lived experience, but also reportage. Phil doesn't do street photography just as an idea, but as a way to return and to analyze places he has been doing and the city he has been lived for so long in a very special way. So Phil, thank you again for being with us and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. Nice to meet you as well.
And I just want to give a little reminder to all our viewers to keep supporting, keep subscribing, and keep commenting, because it was just a small click to you. It means the world for us. So, Phil, let's just then dive deep immediately in this interview. And the very first question I want to ask you is, who is Phil Penman, according to Phil Penman?
Interesting. So I would probably say I'm just a bit of a workhorse, very driven, always been very driven. That comes from kind of like diagnosed dyslexic when I was at school. And sometimes you have a couple of teachers in your career that are not very good. And I had a teacher that said basically that I would never amount to anything. Discovered sport and became very competitive, and I was very good at sport. And then from there, it just basically kept pushing me forward. Just, I was enjoyed doing sport. Photography was always like the backup subject. It was never my primary. So I'd say, yeah, pretty driven person, goal orientated. That's Phil Penman.
Okay. And Phil Penman also has a very interesting story throughout your career, apart from moving because you come from a very small village, if I'm not mistaken, in the UK, and then you moved to a very, very big city, kind of the opposite of what you were used to. Can you tell me a little bit about it and how you have experienced, how you felt this transition to one place to the other, and if it has in a way impacted the way you are today, or the photographer you are today?
Yeah, I couldn't wait to get out, to be honest. I left when I was like 16. I think it was 16 years I got out. It was I would say it was like 360 people. Picture like Harry Potter land, like the thatch cottages and everything, and the sheep and the farming, and it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it was a beautiful upbringing. You're living in the countryside, one of the most beautiful places in the world, but it just, there's not very much going on there. Most people retire there. They don't, it's most people, if you're goal orientated and you want to do well, you're trying to get away. So I left at 16 and I went to a place called Reading, which was outside London. And I studied there for 3 years and I was working there as well. So I did about 1 year working there. And then I got my big break. I was on one of these jobs and I met the right person at the right time and found myself 2 weeks later moving to Los Angeles. And then I lived in LA for like 6 months. And then from LA, I moved to New York City, which is where I live today. 25 years still here, still enjoying it, still ever-changing city though.
Yes, I can imagine. I will just jump in because I've read that you grown up with a father who was a news photographer as well. And my question is, what did you normalize with such a figure, let's say, in your family? What did you normalize for you that other photographer maybe have learned later on in their lives, if there's something, of course?
Yeah, so like you said, yeah, my dad was a news photographer. He also did like PR photography photography as well. So like public relations, working for the council, corporate jobs as well. He did a lot of corporate work. I had no intention to go into photography at all. Like I said, I was into sports, so I wanted to go down that route. And so I could hear him, grumbling and complaining about jobs and clients that you work with. But he was always very insistent that I kind of have a backup subject just in case the sports didn't fall through. And he made me, like we said, well, I'd like to do photography. So he made me go through like a local newspaper that he worked for. And he said, like, pick out what you think is the best picture, the best composed picture. It doesn't have to be interesting, just technically. And I picked the one that he considered to be the best one in there. And he said, all right, well, I'll let you take a career in photography, and bought me my first camera, which was a Nikomat. But I was very lucky because we had a darkroom at home. He taught me how to process film, how to print. And then it's anyone that's prints out there, it's very, very addictive. So I would be in there all night sometimes, like the next morning, still working. But you're submerged in the photography world because my dad is also very driven and very hardworking. So I kind of get that from him. You are, like we always used to comment as like photographers are unfortunately are known for complaining. The nickname for photographers or a group of photographers is called a groan. So I learned how the newspapers worked, like the backstory, what some of the jobs that he used to go on and how he would capture them. And then also like what the clients were looking for. So, I remember my first ever, it was an interview for a job, for my first ever photography job. And I was assigned by the newspaper to go and shoot 5 different jobs. And it was, one was like a sports event, one was a check presentation, one was a portrait. And per each job, he would say, right, what's the next job? Okay, do you know what you need to do? So he kind of got me through that first interview, and then I got the job, and I was away from there. I kind of took off. It's a very, very tough job. Like my first job was working as chief photographer for a local newspaper. And I always say to everyone, it's probably the best learning curve you can have because you have to do, 8 different jobs a day. The photographers were always like within the newspaper, the photographers were always kind of looked down upon a little bit by the news staff. We weren't really taken too seriously, but at the same time, the paper couldn't function without you. So they would have us doing like 8 jobs a day, every 30 minutes, and you're driving like 100 miles per hour from job to job, trying to get to these jobs. You go in, you do a quick picture, you come out, you go to the next job. And I did that for like a year before I got a break working for the national newspapers, like the British Nationals. Then it's a lot more serious. Like there's a lot more pressure. If you screw up, you could be in big trouble because you could be involved in a lawsuit. You could get your company involved in a lawsuit. If you photograph a job, you don't do a good job, or you tell a story in a way that is politically one-sided, that could get you in trouble as well. Like I was still in the era where we tried to document things in a independent. You didn't have a political standpoint. Your job was just to go to the job and document what you see and try not to put a bias either side. So I was still of that generation. I still believe in that as well. Like I don't believe that that's how it should be. So I had a good upbringing as a photographer.
Great. I really enjoyed this story because the interesting thing I feel about your career and your learning curve is that you've also tried different things. So as you were saying, you started in an agency working for news outlets in that sense, but you also had a period of your life where you work as a paparazzi, if I'm not mistaken. And that was also a very interesting, let's say, branch and crazy branch of photography. In fact, I want to connect to this and I wanted to ask you, what did your paparazzi era, let's say, teach you that you still bring with you today, or maybe that you don't bring with you at all from that period of your life?
Those guys, that there's the fastest photographers out there. It's like insane. Like it's very hard to comprehend, and unless you're in it. I always used to say, like, if say I was taking a day off, right, and you're walking down the street, and what would happen, say an SUV with, say, Jessica Simpson or some celebrity will quickly pull over. It's almost like a bomb has gone off. It's like cars, like 10 cars, just screeching to a halt, blocking the road, everyone jumping out of a car, running to get a picture, which is you've got 2 seconds to get it. Like everyone's scrambling to get in front to get this picture. So you had to be really, really fast with your camera. And then it's even once you got the picture, it's everyone is just basically dropping on the floor, grabbing their laptops and quickly trying to send their pictures within minutes of taking the picture, because the pressure of it's not the photographer, because the photographer doesn't care. We'll go and shoot whatever job you want. If you want us to shoot weddings, we'll shoot weddings. But the public demand on celebrity is huge. No one would be a paparazzi if there wasn't the demand from the public for those
For
pictures.
it.
Yeah. None of us wanted to do it. And the thing is, those kind of pictures, the one that I just described where everyone's running like crazy, they're not even big money pictures. The big money pictures are the ones where the celebrity has no idea you've even taken the picture, because your skill set is more in tune to a sniper than a photographer. You're basically like a private detective slash sniper, where it's, you could be taking the picture from 1 mile away, half a mile, with 800 mil with a doubler and a 1.4 converter on it. And then you were still cropping the image. So we had the different types of people that were doing the job. Like we literally had ex-army snipers doing what we used to do. We had people from all walks of life, because the money that was involved was so crazy. You could go and come back that day $100,000 richer, or $1 million richer, or the most I ever heard for one picture was $12 million. So that's very enticing to someone. But I never wanted to do that kind of work. Like I had no intention of ever doing that kind of work. But the agency that I moved to in Los Angeles is a company called Splash News, run by two guys, Gary and Kevin, who were very, very good at what they did. I really wanted to be in the US, and trying to get a visa to the US, if you're British, is almost impossible. I think for a lot of countries, it's very, very difficult to get in here. So once you get that visa, you know that, right, well, if I don't do this kind of work, and they explained to me, they said, look, we're going to have you doing all these investigative news stories, these big portraits. You're going to be working for all the big British papers on the biggest stories, but the money is made in the paparazzi work. That's where, as an agency, we make all our money. And if you don't want to learn it, that's fine. You get back on a plane and you go back to England. And there was just no way that was going to happen. And, if you're a kid in your 20s and all of a sudden you're making, I'll give you an example. When I was in England, I was making £13,500 a year, and I was working nonstop. And then you move to LA, in your first year, you're making $100,000. Why would you ever want to go back?
Of course. Yeah. It's quite a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's huge difference. And you're working on the biggest stories in the world. You're working on the front cover news stories, but you still have to do this paparazzi work to pay, but you still get to do the biggest stories. So I did that for 5 years, and then you have no life. You live out of a suitcase. You're flying a couple of times a week somewhere. You never know how long you're going to be gone for. So I would get the call, right, quick, get to the airport, and then you're off to Argentina overnight, and you're going to be there for 2 weeks. But you might not get to fly back to New York. It might be that something's happened in Idaho, and they say, right, you've got to fly there now, and then you're there for a week. And so you have no friends, and you have no girlfriend, and no life really other than the job.
And what do you think did you have to unlearn from that period of life into this kind of street photography approach that now instead you have, which is very, very different, of course, from the paparazzi era? Is there something that you had to not do? Because every time I think about paparazzi, honestly, I always think about ethics most of the time, but also invisibility, also speed, as you were saying. What did you bring with you from that era, and what did you had to actively unlearn from that instead?
Yeah. So it's interesting, so you say ethics. It's you're basically in this job where you're just like, all right, can I do this job? Because it's basically celebrity. And what I slowly started realizing 6 months in, that a lot of it is set up. So they're actually, a lot of the celebrities, especially today, they work with photographers where the image is controlled, and you're like, hang on a second, like, this is BS. Like I didn't think it was like this. But believe it or not, it would, like, I had a lot of relationships with celebrities because of the pictures that you wouldn't take. So say you're walking along and you see them and they're with their kid and it's like a intimate moment. They're gonna look over in you and see, right, is he taking our picture right now? And if you drop your camera, like, no, I'm not taking this picture, they'll look at you and then they'll realize, oh shit, like, okay, he must be okay. So then what happens is they start to go, well, hang on, that guy, he's all right. And then they will start to give you things. So they would give you pictures. So I used to get phone calls from like the security teams of these celebrities saying, we're going to be going ice skating today. Do you want to get some pictures? Just make sure that you don't get seen. Because believe it or not, the celebrities are more concerned about the public than the photographers.
Sure. Correct.
It could be the stalker, or it could be, I remember days when like David Beckham would be in New York and there would be 500 people on the street, would shut the street down
My God.
because people are obsessed with celebrity. So I would say for me, the things that I took away would be definitely speed, but then also learning how to look at things differently. So as a press photographer, when you're hired to do a job, I always say, like, we're not arrogant enough to think that our photography gets to dictate the front cover of a newspaper. I wish some photographers out there probably are, but you have to basically give that newspaper or that client that you're working for lots of different options of pictures from that same job, and then they pick the picture that they think works for that cover or maybe that spread. How do you tell a story in a series of 5 pictures? So I learned doing these press jobs that, like, right, there's a good picture to be had here in this street scene, and I need to just move around and find it.
Okay. That's very interesting. I feel like that really complements it because there's always this kind of like, not stigma, but like bias towards paparazzi or people that comes from that era. But instead, you enlightened quite a lot of things. So very, very interesting. Also, because as I was saying before, you've done very different photography eras. Let's say you're going through so many different eras. Also, reportage, as you were mentioning, the 9/11 also series that I've seen, and everything that came after with it. So it's quite interesting. And I want to move on a little bit because I feel like this is also something that, as we were touching a little bit maybe above before, I feel like background experiences, everything we come in touch with definitely has an impact on oneself, on ourselves. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of inspirations, what kind of not necessarily just photographic inspirations have you feel like have gone through you to get you to the style or to the visions, to the idea, to the photographic approach that you have today, if you can share some.
When you think about it, and no one really ever says this, the photography, okay, what makes a photographer really doesn't have much to do with a camera. The camera is, okay, it's technique, how you see lighting, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your life experiences and how you treat people. What have you seen in your life? If you come from a privileged point of view, you're going to have a certain point of view. If you're a working class background, that you say you lost your home, you were out on the street for 5 years and then you're back, you're going to have a totally different viewpoint than somebody else. So I think how you submerged yourself in your upbringing as well, and what you were exposed to. Like, I was lucky that my parents are very into art. So whatever city we would go to from a young age, we would always go to all the museums. I wasn't into it, but I remember like going to Paris, and my dad wanted to go in the Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, and all these different museums with my mom. And then same, even now when we go to London, my dad still wants to go and, right, let's go in the National Portrait Gallery. Let's go here. So I'm being subjected to all this artwork from a very early age that you're seeing. But then also, like, I used to do all these different types of jobs. I was introduced to many different walks of life, just from, I'll to give you a couple of examples. I used to be a milkman. Right. Like, remember the glass bottles of milk that they used to
Yes.
deliver? Yeah, I used to do that.
Wow.
I used to be a street sweeper, so I used to clean up all the cigarette shit and everything off the floor after a market. I used to be a garbage man, you know, where they would the trucks. I did that, but then I also was introduced to I used to do silver service wine waiting. So I actually had to serve Prince Andrew many years ago. For those that know, there's a event called Royal Ascot in the UK, which is like this big horse racing event. I used to work there, serving all the rich people. So you're being introduced to all these different walks of life and the, you know, Sir Madam, all this stuff. I remember one crazy event I was doing. I was working at this private event, and it was, do you know the horse and hound people? Have you ever heard of this?
No? What is it?
We have it's like the horse and hounds. So it was the rich people typically would dress up with their red jackets and their black hats, and they would chase after a hound. And it's very hated in the UK by the public because everyone and the animal rights people, they despise it because of this. So I was working this event. It was a very rich dinner, and someone had called in with a bomb threat on the place I was working in. And I remember my boss saying to me, start going around looking in the rooms if you see anything suspicious. And I'm like, are you seriously asking me to look for a bomb?
That's
It's like
funny.
I'm like some
Okay.
18-year-old kid, and I'm like, you've got me on bomb lookout. Like, sure, yeah, I'll go find the bomb for you.
I see what I can do.
Yeah, I found it. Do you want me to detonate it for you? But I was introduced to all these different people, and I think it comes out in your work, you know? So it's definitely, at the time, you hate it. Like, even the paparazzi work, I couldn't stand it. Like, absolutely despised it, but I knew I had to do it if I wanted to stay in the US. I learned so much from that. I took in 2015, I quit my job, like the celebrity thing, and I actually started working in cycling. So I was working for actually an Italian company called Castelli. It's a red Scorpion. Yeah, I used to work for them doing sales, but it introduced me, same thing, to all these people and that I never ever would have met, like all these global finance guys. And then you learn something from them as well. And it also got me jobs because I met all these people through cycling, that when I quit the cycling job, I could walk into doing jobs. So it all helps make up the photographer who you are.
Exactly. And I want to connect to this because I wanted to ask you then, do you think that finding your own style is something that comes naturally, or is this something that is deliberately built?
I think it's a little bit of both, because I think, you know, you can find a style. Probably took me 15 years, I'd say, before I started shooting my world. Because, you know, what the nice thing when I took the cycling job, there was no pressure on me really I wasn't shooting for money. You know, there was no, I don't care if these pictures sell. It's purely just shooting for the love of photography. And I guess I just started to build a style for myself where a lot of people were resonating with the pictures that I was taking, and they were looking at the work, and you know, the best compliment you can hear is when someone says, look, you know, I'm flicking through social media and I instantly know that it's your picture. I don't know if that's good or bad, where it's just completely out of focus and terrible, and they're like, I know that's yours, or it's like, you know, you have a style and that's pretty good. But then you don't want to get bored as well, though. So like you know, the last thing you want to do is become like 50 years later be taking the same picture that you took or the same style you took 50 years ago, because that it's just not fun. It's boring. So there's this motivation to how do you evolve your style as well. So, you know, I try to take inspiration from artwork, cinema, and, you know, all right, I can do this. Now what else can I do?
Or to keep it growing?
Yeah, like, you know, I think Joel Meyerowitz is a great example of that, where he would, you know, he was a great street photographer, but then he switched it up, you know, and he was shooting large format stuff and put all these portrait series of like the redhead and, uh, you know, whether you like some of the work or not, and that goes for all different photographers, whether when they try to change, I admire the fact that you're trying to evolve your work.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And as I was saying before, like it's a continue evolving of styles, of people, encounters, of anything, walks of life, as you said before. I also want to ask you, because you've often been labeled, let's say, as a street Salgado, but like such as like a contemporary Cartier-Bresson or a street Salgado, which I know Salgado has had a big influence on you as well in terms of inspiration as well. How do you how do you feel under these labels? Do you find them, I mean, sure, it's something nice to hear, of course, but do you find them misleading, or how do you find yourself with these definitions, with labels in general?
First off, I have to find the person that said that and say thank you, because I'm not. I wish I was at that level, but no, truly not worthy of that title. But it's very nice of people to think that. Salgado is definitely a big influence. Remember, I'd not really heard of him, and then I lived in a house. There was 5 students at college, and my buddy Sam, he's still a photographer. He had, I think it was Migration and Workers. When you're in college, you have no money. You can't afford to go and buy photography books. You're like just trying to figure out how to go drinking on Thursday night. He had Migrations and Workers, so I would like go through these books of Salgado's. I'm like, holy shit, this is really good stuff. This is way better than a lot of stuff that I've been subjected to. And then he said, well, there's going to be a show of his at the Royal Photographic Society in Bath, I think it was. So we drove there to see the exhibition, and that kind of, that's life altering when you see that kind of work and his body of work that he had. Because, the work when you were studying Lewis Hine, Jacob Rees, Dorothy Lang, Walker Evans, all the different movements, Robert Mapplethorpe, we're learning all this stuff, but they never, believe it or not, they never taught us about Salgado or Arnold Newman. Those were the people. And the only reason I know about Arnold Newman's work is because my friend Debbie, who was also one of my housemates, she was walking home and said, I found this book about Dwayne Michaels and Arnold Newman in the trash. She saw it in a trash can. She grabbed it and she brought it home. And I was like, wow, thank you. Then that's how I discovered Arnold Newman's work. And then he was a big influence. Obviously, we learned about Cartier-Bresson, but Elliot Erwitt, he's another one we didn't learn about in college, who's another huge influence. So you find them in the end. You find the work in the end, but
you get attracted to those things anyways, like if it's inside of you. Absolutely.
yeah.
I want to move on a little bit in terms of style, in terms of technique, editing, and post-production a little bit, which is also a part of photography that it's quite important as well. Because I've read in an interview that you've said that people often ruin their photograph with too much over-processing or clarity in that sense. And I wanted to ask you, what is your boundary within which you move in terms of post-production? Not in general your process of post-production. Where do you draw the line in post-production?
It's funny because I actually just answered this question to a critique of someone's images this morning. And yeah, because I do a lot of classes and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's if you're doing commercial work, right? So you're doing fashion or you're doing big commercial campaigns. I get it. People Photoshop work. I've been involved in campaigns where they take 10 of your images and they put it together. And I get that. It's you're shooting for a client, right? And it's a fashion piece or whatever. It's very, very different if you are a photojournalist or a news photographer or say a street photographer. And what you're doing is you're supposed to be, we're not calling ourselves fine artists at this point. Like there are different types of street photography where people consider themselves more like fine art. There's some amazing photographers out there that I know that they do this where they'll mix a few images together, but it's not, you're not saying that it's a real thing. For me, if I'm shooting on the street, this is the one I think is like one of the last true art forms of us documenting what we see. And you're not removing the car or the sign. You know, I don't agree with removing anything from an image. You know, other than dust marks, it doesn't interest me because I'm still the old school of like there's a satisfaction in knowing that you got that picture yourself. Okay, if there's something in there that it's not right, go back, try it again. You know, go again. You know, I shoot lots of different type of work. There's stuff where it's like very, very quick and you just got to be very quick on your feet and you're just capturing what's happened. But then there are other types of shots where, you know, the world is your stage and you're working with actors on the street. Well, that's what I call them. But I live in New York City. There's always another actor walking along, you know, so if I didn't get it on the first shot, I'll get it on the next one. But yeah, keep it. Again, it's all subjective. It's all very personal. I just prefer to be still, I need to get it myself. There's a satisfaction.
The type of photography we deal with, as you were saying, of course, commercial, of course, other type of photography, that's still fine in a way. But if we do it within this field, manipulation doesn't then become graphic and not photography anymore. It drifts away, if we could say that.
Think of it like you're doping in sport and you won, but you didn't do it on your own.
Really,
You had
exactly.
help, you know,
That's a
like
perfect metaphor. Yeah.
you had a little help there. Um, and you know, like for all of you that are athletes out there, there's something very special about when you cross the line first and you win, and you see it with people like, you know, they break down in tears, right? It's happened to me. I've won a race before where you break down in tears because you're like, shit, that year of training, it paid off. I won and I did it on my own steam. And there's something also whereabouts, like if you get that picture and you're like, that's pretty damn good. And I did it myself. And there's nothing going on. Like I'd say the only thing that I would say is that I would do is like the old darkroom techniques of dodging and burning. So like, all right, maybe I'm going to burn in this area a little bit because some people, it's weird because you've got this whole generation that didn't know film, right? So we all grew up with film. Like the older photographers, we grew up with film. And it's always funny, actually, if you want to really upset a professional photographer, if you really want to piss them off and they're shooting digital, you say, why didn't you shoot film? And I've watched it with Martin Parr, Thomas Hopker. They get really annoyed because it's like, we all shot film. This digital is actually pretty bloody good, you know? I get it. I like film. But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
Very, very interesting. I wanted to move to the second question I have, and I want to you're not really the type of photographer that could be defined as a one camera, one lens photographer at all. I wanted to ask you, could you elaborate a little bit on this idea and what does it actually mean to you, if you could share?
One camera, one lens.
That you're not exactly. What is, let's say, your philosophy in that sense?
I'm a greedy git. I want all the other pictures as well. There's so many great pictures that you can get with different lenses. And it's also, I've been battling with trying to think about it. Who was it that introduced this? And I've spoken with friends about it as well, because when we grew up, no one was ever one camera, one lens. It never existed. And it was always like, you look at Cartier-Bresson, all these guys, they all used multiple lenses. You know, William Klein's work with the long lens, like beautiful stuff. And we were thinking about it, and it was like, we think it's actually come from like newer generation of YouTube where this has been introduced, because it like I said, when I grew up, it was, my dad was like, well, you're going to need a wide lens, you're going to need a 50mm, and then you're going to need something like a longer lens, like a telephoto of some sort. So my first, there was never ever any talk of one camera lens. It was always like, all right, I need these three lenses. And I had them from the very, very beginning. When I started, I had my Western light meter as well, because everything would be done with a light meter. There was I learned fully manual. That's how I learned. I get it. Some people, that's how they want to see the world, and it's a lot of people, they don't want the weight. They like a lightweight camera, but the thing is, you got to think about the compression of a lens as well. You can move around all day and night. That 24mm lens is still not going to give you the look of a 200. It's not going to do it. And there are a lot of great pictures that you can shoot with a longer lens. So it's like, like I said, I'm a greedy git. I want that picture as well.
And how do you personally decide whether it's a 35, a 75, or is it instinct in the moment, or is there a logic, let's say, behind it? How is it for you?
It becomes muscle memory, to be honest, because when we were doing the news jobs, you'd have to shoot every job like that. The best way you learn as a news photographer is you look at the paper the next day and you go, shit, that other photographer got the picture because he shot this angle with this lens and I didn't. And then the next time you go to a job, you keep adding different shots to kind of your photographic vocabulary, as it were. So you keep building up all these different styles so that you're shooting for many different publications all around the world. Like, we're shooting for Paris Match is not the same as the New York Post or the Sun newspaper, right? And my bosses were always like, look, we need to make money. So I would learn by shooting many different styles on many different lenses. So then you know that when you see a certain kind of scene, you go, okay, well, that certain type of scene would look really good on a longer lens. And it's almost like you're instinctively going for the lens whilst you're walking towards the picture. But that takes years and years of practice. Photographers would love you to believe that we all go out and just crank out amazing pictures every day. We don't. It's crap. Most of it is crap. You are going out there to maybe get 5 to 10 great pictures in your lifetime. And most of the work you're doing is you're just trying to get consistently better every day. No one is going out there and just producing incredible work all the time. It doesn't work like that.
At all. And do you think that technical consistency sometimes can overcome or be placed maybe at the higher place compared to style or vision? Because there is a big debate within the community as well, where technical consistency has much more value perhaps compared to style or vision or the idea behind the photograph. Do you agree with that? Is it something that you search for in your photographs or not?
A good photographer's not even thinking about technical. He already knows it. It's irrelevant. It's like, that's why we go to school and that's why we learn. It's because we're trying to learn the technical. Technology is constantly evolving. I get that. And there's more stuff that you need to learn. But the basic principles of photography, it's the same. It has been for the last, 100 odd years. It's capturing an image. All we're trying to do, if you want a great image, okay, life experience and feeling. When someone looks at an image, it could be the most technically perfect picture in the world, but if someone looks at it and they feel nothing, then you failed. It's even if you're a landscape photographer and you are obsessed with technical, someone still has to look at that picture and said, I feel like I'm there. It's a beautiful scene. I feel like I'm in the mountains with that photographer. And the technical is secondary to the beauty or the vision of what you're shooting. And it could be that you could shoot a portrait of someone and one image could be technically perfect and the other one could be slightly soft or there's movement. But if you look at the one and you go, I really feel something, like I know I get who that person is. I can see the energy in that person. That's far more important than technical. The best photographer I've seen probably in my career was a 7-year-old. It was a 7-year-old kid who was doing Star Wars figures in mini sets with lighting. And I'm like, this 7? Like, are you out of your mind like this? And it was just purely just, I guess for the love of it, was into photography, and who knows where they're going to go from there. But it was just like I was inspired by seeing that someone that young was that far along. Yeah, it's great. It's great to see.
Absolutely. So to conclude on this, do you have this? I guess it's a little bit hard in that sense, but do you have your own definition of a successful photo? What makes a photo successful for you?
It's tough, right? Because it's all personal. And what I consider as a successful picture, someone else might think is terrible. I think a lot of mine are more to do with like how I felt when I took the picture. And if I captured what I was feeling at the time.
I feel like that's much harder than composition, finding the light or finding the right subject. That's something that I guess it takes quite a long time.
Yeah. I'd say mine is more about being out in the elements because that's what I love. I love shooting in horrible weather. Unfortunately, I love shooting in horrible weather at the minute because I realize that that's where I get a lot of my best pictures. It's just like it's because you're creating this scene and you feel like you're there. Like as a viewer, you're looking at the picture and you're like, okay, I'm in a snowstorm or I'm in a rainstorm. Like I had these poor people at the weekend. We were doing a workshop. It was like -20 out and we were shooting out on the street. And it was like, you're shooting these awesome scenes in New York. And I'm like, it sucks right now. I know you can't feel your hands, but when you get home, these pictures, trust me, you're going to like those pictures.
I guess it's the challenging situations that push you further, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's and then sometimes it's like your best picture is the one that there was no practice, there was no setting something up, there was no moving it around. It was just like you turn around and you see this picture and you like cannot believe what you're witnessing. You got 2 seconds to get it, you get it, and you go home and you're like, I could never reproduce that shot in a million years, even if I tried to.
Ever again. Love it. Beautiful. Beautifully explained. I want to move now forward with some hot takes, I guess, in street photography. And my very first question would be, is there anything that you find in the contemporary photography scene that you think it's overrated or that bores you or that it's really not part of the craft, which is being, let's say, pushed or influenced by quite a lot of contemporary things like AI and everything. But let's start first with this. Is there anything that bores you or that you feel it's exaggerated in the contemporary street photography scene?
Again, I'd say it's all subjective, right? But for me, the big problem became where everyone started chasing social media likes and followers. And it did become, you can see it, you can look on the algorithms, what resonates with people. So typically portraits do terrible on social media, unless it's a certain kind of portrait. And I'm not going to go down that road right now. But typically, if you're doing, portraits of people on the street, most people will not respond to those pictures. And it's kind of sad that that's the way it is. Typically, silhouette pictures, abstract, anything that looks on a phone will do well on social media. But the problem is I remember the guys that first started putting that work out. And then, of course, everybody has now copied those photographers, right? So everything you see is pretty much the same now. And I don't know which photographer took which picture. You can look on some of these, you look on some of these street photography forums on Instagram or whatever it is, and I can't tell whose image is what because their style doesn't stand out. Or worse, is you go and copy a picture that has already been done by another photographer, but everybody already knows that the original photographer that took that picture, which makes you look even worse because it's like, well, hang on, not only did you copy a style, but you've gone and copied an exact replica of some picture that someone has done. So it might be that for practice, you want to learn your training, you want to know how that picture is done, but you don't go and share it necessarily because it's, or if you're going to do it, then you say, okay, this picture was inspired by this photographer. Like give them the credit due for that picture. Yeah. As far as I get more inspired, sorry, by film, television, and artists. I hate to say it. Yeah, I still look at photography, but it tends to be stuff from the past because they were doing a lot of stuff that we are not doing. I think they were a little bit more creative, but we've definitely gone down the path of chasing the followers and the likes, and It's hurt us.
It's crazy because the advent of technology has, of course, been very helpful as well in connection, in learning things also from the past and being influenced by others quicker in a faster way. At the same time, though, has we could say, maybe it's a little bit extreme, but we could say that it's kind of has killed a little bit creativity in that sense, or pushing you further. And my next question also connects to this, because there is this trend on social media of POV, or of behind the scenes of how a shot is made in a way. And do you think that kind of content can actually change the way we see photography, or the way the emerging photographers see photography, and are they influenced somehow in the process of doing photography again?
So like the POV stuff, a lot of that is more driven by the algorithm as well. You know, if you're a working photographer and you are reliant on this for your career and how you pay your family's bills and you put your kids through school, right? You need social media. Like we love to rag and critique social media, but you need it. It's, you're not in the luxurious position of having a job. So you have to adapt based on what you have to do to stay in business. And it became very clear to me years ago that it was like, okay, when Adam Mazzeri came out and said that Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app, it's video, I knew that, well, okay, I'm going to have to either learn how to do video, or that's it for me. I'm going to have to kiss Instagram goodbye. And again, this is my career. For most people are not going to say, hey, I'm going to give up my career. So I just figured, well, you know what I'll do is I'll just start filming the back of my camera, and I'll just show people how I see the world when I'm taking a picture. And a lot of people said, I learned so much from seeing how you do that. But then everybody started doing it. And the only reason I did it was because I'm not going to pay for a film crew to be following me around all the time. I'd love to be able to afford that, but so that's why I did it. But then people say, well, hang on, like I had a post once, it added 17,500 followers on one video, 2 million views. And then I had another one that was pretty similar. And it's like, well, hang on, that's a lot of new people that are potential new clients or buying books, workshops. And I was doing that. And then everybody did it. And then it's like, right, the next trend is, apparently Instagram, the algorithm is pushed by front-facing iPhone cameras. Those videos supposedly get pushed more than others. So like if you put up professional looking content, that is going to get way less views than if you were doing a selfie or you're filming yourself. So again, you're like, well, shit, I need to adapt again. So now it's like everyone has to talk in front of the camera. So I was like, well, how am I going to do this? I remember I did one, and it was purely to thank everyone for coming to a show that I was doing in Paris. And then a lot of people said, oh, we'd love to see you more in front of the camera. Like, we don't get to see you. It was so funny. I was in a location this weekend. I was teaching a workshop, and I just sit down it was an area where there's lots of tourists. And I sit down, and there's this kid with a camera next to me. And he turns around, and he freaks out. And I'm like, what? And he said, you're Phil Penman, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, some kid, young guy from Japan. And he said, I'm a big fan of your work and everything. We got chatting, and then we messaged, and he said, it was so surreal and so weird because all I'm ever used to seeing is you on a camera on my phone. And then to actually see the person in person is very different. But we've done this, right? As photographers, we do these interviews. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram all the time. You are now, because that's how the business has evolved. Yeah, you have to adapt. But also we now have like a global audience. When I was growing up, you would do a talk in person, but only the people in the room would know who you were. Now, we're talking, you're in Bologna, I'm in New York City. Your audience has grown. So, but the only thing I would say, I'd say it's mostly positive, is that you go to cities around the world and people know who you are. They will come up to you on the street because they recognize you from YouTube, which is, it's great. unless they're a crazy stalker, of course.
Yeah, of course. No, nothing like that, hopefully. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, generally it's a privilege to be in the position that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So also to get the chance to talk and to share what we think, that's already a privilege in itself. I want to ask you something different, still staying on the topic. And I want to ask you, there is this, let's say, debate, if we want to call it like this, that people often think that street photography is art and documentary photography is information. But can it not be both? Street photography in this sense. How do you look at it? Like, can street photography be information or not? What do you think?
There seems to be a lot of people with a lot of time on their hands debating this stuff. It seems that way, you know, the famous quote, right? The art is in the beholder. Yeah, so it's eye of the beholder. It's, yeah, if someone looks at a street picture and then they consider art, then great. But, you know, documentary work there's a lot more to that. Like, you know, you're documenting history, historical standpoint. Again, it's all totally subjective, right? Yeah, I don't take a stand. I don't think that you should. I don't think you should take a standpoint. It's necessarily like I think you close yourself up to things if you start doing that too much. Like earlier you mentioned the point labels. I think as humans we love labels, don't we? We love to put ourselves in boxes because we can't function unless everything's organized and right. Phil is this photographer and he stays in this box and he's not allowed to be in the other box. God forbid he can't be in both boxes. My brain cannot function if he's in both boxes. But we love labels, apparently.
I feel like maybe that makes us feel secure, safe. Let's say that we know what we are.
It can be good for marketing. That's different. Because no one wants to be the jack of all trades because nobody takes you seriously if you're everything. From a marketing point of view, you might say that you are this because you're appealing to a certain demographic. But I think generally, the more you try to, it's tough, right? Because the bigger you get, the more the box becomes smaller. It's like, okay, Phil's a street photographer. He's a black and white street photographer. He's a New York black and white street photographer. And that's good from a marketing point of view. But then at the same time, it's going to hurt you as well, because then people only know you as that one thing. So then, right, well, how do you, like Joel, where you start saying, well, okay, I can do this. Now I need to introduce my color work or my work from around the world. Yeah, don't limit yourselves.
Don't limit yourself. That could be the perfect advice. Yeah, I really like that. Another thing I want to discuss with you is because you come work in the street photography craft, and another topic of discussion, I guess, is consent or privacy in that sense. Also, I feel like you lived in the US and I live in Europe. It's also a very different way of approaching consent and photographing people without consent. So, do you think in moving within street photography, of course, is it still acceptable to photograph strangers without their consent for the sake of the art, or or not? What is your take on this kind of ethics?
Privacy is it's an interesting one. You have no privacy. You sold your privacy. And not only that, you're selling my privacy, because when you sit down with me, that little box that you ticked on your phone, okay, you're now selling my data. I didn't give you permission when we sat down at lunch to give my information to Facebook, but you did it. Well, we both neutrally did it. You know, there are CCTVs that are filming you everywhere, right? There was a funny one. A friend of mine was like, he was taking pictures in Switzerland recently, and someone came over to him and said, hey, you can't do pictures of our building. And he's like, why not? And he said, well, we were watching you on the CCTV camera taking pictures of the building. And the guy goes, I didn't give you consent to film me with your CCTV camera. I don't remember saying you could film me, right? You never, you didn't give anyone permission to do that. Right? These are private corporations. And so it's nothing to do with privacy. It's purely to do with, I don't want you taking a picture of me. You personally, I don't want you personally taking a picture of me. And the thing is, people always say this, like I travel in Europe all the time, and everyone tells me people don't like having their picture taken. And so what we do in our classes, I say, right, one of the assignments is you have to go up to someone in person and ask them if they wouldn't mind posing for a portrait. And then they're shocked by how many people want their picture taken. They all say yes, pretty much. And it's one thing, it's different in every single country, right? If you, in the US, generally, if you're in a public space, you've given up your consent. It's more about how you use the picture. So if you go and use the picture for a commercial purpose, like you're doing it for a Nike ad or something like that, generally like movies, right? All those movies that are shot on the streets, they just put up a board on the street. Like we've had to do it where you put signs on the street and say, look, if you're walking in this general area, you're giving up your consent to be in this area. You will be featured in the film. And if you don't want to be, don't walk in this area. And then some countries, they have different rules. But think about it like this. If all of a sudden everybody had to give up their consent, then that's censorship and news would cease to exist. You would have no more news anymore, which is far worse if you have full censorship, which I think is where we are going if we're not careful. Yeah, I'll give you an interesting one, which is really scary, actually. There's a guy, not going to name names or anything, but he's a world expert on this stuff. And he doesn't want to be seen on any CCTV cameras at all. So he will go to great lengths to not be seen on any CCTV camera or any camera because he's worried about how AI will use his image in the future.
That is very scary. Absolutely. Absolutely. And touching upon AI, this is something very interesting as well. What do you think let me connect it a little bit in an easier way. What does real photography require us today that technology can't replace
For now,
for now?
that's the scary point. There was an interesting post by Adam Mazzeri, again, the head of Instagram recently, where he said the camera companies have got it wrong. They've got it wrong where they're pushing for lenses that are like perfect, right? Edge to edge sharpness, perfect. Said AI can do that. He said the stuff that's going to resonate in the future is the stuff that looks real. The stuff where it's like there are the defects, there are the blemishes, the stuff that make us up, the life is not so perfect. That is the stuff that will resonate more with humans because they're going to we're all going to be seeking real because we don't know what we're watching. We don't know what we're watching anymore. We don't know, like probably the last 10 years, there's a lot of stuff we've watched that never happened, news events that never happened, and you see it on your YouTube and these thumbnails, and they're very, very well done. It's very well executed, and we don't know what is real anymore.
Interesting. Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that really concludes it on the AI and Instagram and social media. I have just a couple of more questions I wanted to ask you, especially for your professionality in your career. And you've done books, you've done exhibitions, you do workshop, you teach a lot as well. And I wanted to ask you, do you think a photographer today can realistically today make a living off street photography without diluting its own work of art, its own body of work?
It's not easy. It's not easy, but it can be done. But I think, to tell someone that, okay, quit your job and you go and start doing street photography and you're going to make a living, that's not going to happen. I'm lucky. I've been doing this 30 years professionally. So I have years of body of work and learning behind me, and I'm still learning. We're all still learning. Um, I have that background where I can. It took me from when I quit. I was very good at what I used to do, like the paparazzi celebrity work. I was very good at what I did, but I never put my name on any of my pictures. When I quit that in 2015 is because I knew that the business was going to change. Like the way the money was, I got out before it died. I think with AI and everything, that I believe that people are going to be seeking more real experiences. I'm already seeing it with workshops where, the workshops that I teach, they're selling out a year in advance, and I'd love to say it's me, but I think it's more that people are driven by wanting to do real things. So there is definitely a market there. You see it with a lot of photographers now. A lot of photographers have gone into the education space, teaching. Just because you're a good photographer does not mean that you can be a good teacher. And a lot of photographers don't want to teach you. They don't want you to learn anything either, which is not good. So, which I've never understood because, I got lucky. When I was in college, I had a guy called Andy Fowler. Andy, if you're out there, he helped me. Like, he was one of the first photographers that actually got behind me and was like, shit, this guy's really good. And he would praise me in the critiques every week. And it boosts you up and you get the confidence to go on. And sometimes you just need one person in your life, and it doesn't cost anything to say to someone, well done, you did a good job on this. Some people, they need to hear that. You don't want to. I know when someone's bullshitting me. Like, if they're trying to build you, I know it. But it doesn't hurt, like, to be honest with people and say, like, yeah, that's really good. I wish I'd taken that picture.
You just need one yes, right? Like you can pass a life of no's, but that one yes could truly change it, and it really doesn't cost much. I totally agree with you.
There are the kids doing it now with like YouTube. It's kind of sad in one way that like everyone wants to become an influencer now because they're like, oh, well, you can make money as an influencer. And I think the number one job people say they want to be when they grow up now is an influencer. That's a business that did not exist when I was growing up. So it could be that you're a lens reviewer. You talk about gear. Take Peter McKinnon, for example. Peter's done incredibly well, and building his channel and his social media and everything. So there's definitely people that can make money out there doing it, but it's like I took another job in cycling, selling Lycra for 3 years, okay? While I was building up my second career. So don't go doing anything crazy, quitting your career and thinking that you're just going to make money. Like, you have to have a backup, as my old man used to say.
Absolutely agreed. And one last question. If you could go back in time, would you make the same decisions that you've made, or would you do something different? And in case so, what would you do differently?
There's definitely stuff I would have changed. Definitely some decisions that I probably wouldn't have made. But at the same time, if I'd made those decisions, would I be where I am today? I think you got to let it play out. What will be, and you never know what's around the corner.
And is there anything you would have wished maybe to hear when you were starting that maybe would have not changed your life, but maybe would have had not an influence, but like would have guided you somehow?
I wish when I was, when I was in photography school, I wish we'd learned more about the business side of things, because you need it. Like, it doesn't matter what industry you do. You need to learn about business and marketing and all these things and dealing with lawyers and all the rest of it. I wish that was it. Maybe it is now. Maybe it is in education in some schools, but photography is more than just taking pictures. If you're a photographer, it's a business as well, and you need to know, right, how do I do my taxes? How do I do expenses? All this stuff. I wish I'd known that.
Absolutely. That's very nice, actually. I like this conclusion. It's something that people sometimes don't even think about it because it's art. So they romanticize this field without really.
Yeah, the starving art. Yeah, the starving artist, right? It's like we romanticize, but at the end of the, you're no good to no one if you're not living.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Phil, I thank you very, very much for your time. I hope I made you feel comfortable as much as you made me feel comfortable and that you had fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and thank you to your followers, and yeah, go subscribe, go subscribe. It's we need more channels out there like this. So.
Thank you, Phil. I truly appreciate it. So for everybody who's watching again, thank you for being with us, for following us, and keep subscribing, keep commenting, because was just one small click for you. It means the world for us, for supporting independent street photography and independent made in Italy arts and craftsmanship. So thank you again.
Thank you.